With 1,800 people waiting for an organ transplant in Australia, getting a call to say an organ may be a match can feel like winning the lottery.
They're lucky to do 1 or 2 paediatric lung transplants a year. Sometimes they don't do any.
This is 8-year-old Cooper. 2 years ago, he received a double lung transplant. It saved his mother from making a decision that no parent ever wants to make.
In the last week of July, Cooper had really started to decline. He was needing more and more oxygen. He was really breathless. He was rapidly working to breathe. He was spending more time asleep than awake. And at that point, we were really starting to think this is quite touch and go. I'd had a conversation with Cooper's cardiologist, and I just kind of expressed that I just don't think we can do this anymore. He was so sick, it wasn't fair to keep putting him through it.
A rare genetic condition and severe pulmonary hypertension meant Cooper urgently needed a double lung transplant.
I guess the nature of organ transplant is you don't know when you're going to get the call. So for us, we thought this call, I think we really felt this call would never come and that we would never get to a stage where we could see the light at the end of the tunnel.
And then fate intervened.
And I woke up to a call, and it was the transplant coordinator's number that come up. And she said, oh yeah, no, she goes, so we've got lungs. And I just went blank. I'm like, and I just stopped for a second. I so clearly remember my heart feeling like it had stopped. And just in that moment, nobody else in our family knew but me that our lives was about to change. And I quickly pushed my husband. I'm like, wake up, we've got lungs, we've got lungs. And I ran into Cooper, who was still asleep, and I just tapped him on the shoulder. I'm like, hey, Coop. And he looked at me. I'm like, we got the call for the lungs. And it was the most alive I had seen him in weeks. And yeah, I said, we've got lungs, we're going to go. And paediatric lung transplants are only done in Melbourne at the Alfred Hospital. So we had to get approval to cross state borders for this life-saving medical treatment.
Australia was in lockdown and the borders shut, but all stops were pulled out, and within hours, Cooper was in an air ambulance and on his way to theatre.
It's really risky surgery to do. Cooper was one of the youngest they've done. He just turned 7 at the time, so he was only really little. He'd already gone through such a huge feat to get to this point. I gave him one last kiss. I remember it so clearly. I kissed him on the forehead.
But as Cooper's life was being saved, Sam couldn't stop thinking about the parents who had just lost their child.
And all I could think of at the time was, if he's in theatre, that means there's another family at the moment is grieving the loss of their child. And the thing with lung transplants is, especially in a paediatric setting, they have to be the same size. So we were always told that the donor, didn't matter the gender, but the donor had to be about the same size as Cooper so those lungs would fit, which would then mean that that child had to be around about the same age as Cooper. So the whole time I was very aware that somebody else's child had died for my child to live.